Lindsey Lomis. I'm Lindsey Lomis.
Lindsey Lomis.
I'm Lindsey.
Lindsey Lomis.
My name's Lindsey Lomis.
Okay, so you probably know my name by now. I'm Lindsey Lomis. I'm an 18-year-old singer-songwriter signed with Altadena and Warner Records. I just put out a new EP and I wanted to pay tribute to some women in the music business that have inspired me. I've done it in a series called Into You. It's been a crazy ride so far and I hope you stick around to follow my journey. This is Episode 2, Alessia Cara.
Count up all your problems, then just make a wait. Slow motion.
Hi, Alessia.
Hi.
Hi. It's so nice to finally sit down and talk with you.
I know.
Thank you so
I
much for
think
taking
you're
the
so
time.
great. Thank you. Thanks for having me on. It's so awesome, to see everything you're doing, and I'm super honored to do this. So thanks.
Thank you. Well, let's hop right in. So you were raised in Canada, and I just
Yes.
want to know a little bit, what was the community like there, and how did you get into music, and were your parents kind of musically inclined, or did you just figure it out on your own?
Well, throughout my life, I always said that no one in my family was really into music because that's how it was in my household. My parents did
Yeah.
completely different things. But then I think now, if you look at my roots and my family tree, music has sort of been sprinkled throughout. My grandfather played instruments. A couple aunts and uncles of mine are super into music and sing and stuff. So not so much in my household, but I think it's in my blood somewhere along the line. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same way.
Really?
So-
Your parents weren't into music that much?
Yeah, my parents never really played. My mom fiddled with guitar a bit. My dad did saxophone in high school, but they really just
Oh, sweet.
moved to Nashville and loved to see live music, and that's kind of what got me into it. But yeah, so I've
Sweet.
noticed that obviously you're an incredible songwriter, and you started
Thank
at a
you.
young age, and I think was Here one of the first songs that you wrote?
Yeah, it actually was. It was not only the
Crazy.
first song I put out. I know, it is crazy. I had just started writing music when I was maybe 16 years old is the
Right.
first time. And I wrote this batch of songs with this guy named Sebastian Cole from Atlanta. We
Yes.
got together and started writing together, and Here was I think the third song we wrote. So that would have made it the third song I had ever written before.
Wild. And now I
Yeah.
have to say I respect so much. I was kind of going through your albums and I noticed that you write a lot of the songs by yourself now. And even on that album, there are a few songs that you wrote by yourself. And so that's just I think that's amazing, especially being at the caliber you're at now. You're surrounded by so many big, incredible writers. The fact that you still write by yourself, do you ever find that kind of difficult now, or is it almost easier with the experience?
That's a good question. I think for me, because I'm such a shy person and I'm such a personal writer, my writing is really reflective, and I use that as a catalyst to sort of talk about the things that I have been avoiding in a way. So to me, it's actually easier and better to write by myself because, you know how it works. In modern day, collaboration, it's a lot of writing with people that you've never met before, and you're in a room and you have to spill your whole life to this person you don't know. So
Yes.
for me, it's just easier. I just kind of prefer it, if I'm being honest. And I just made the
Right.
decision after my first album to do everything myself because I wanted to get deeper, and it was just hard for me to go there with people that I didn't know that well, if that makes sense. So
Totally, yeah. And
Yeah.
I can hear that in the songs that you write by yourself versus the ones that you don't. I feel that's what I've always looked up to you as a songwriter, is that you're so vulnerable with your lyrics and melodies, and it really does feel like you just read a page and you pour it out everything in you, and I really admire
Thanks.
that. And
Thank you.
so I think that's awesome that you continue to do that even when it's it's harder. But so you started a YouTube channel when you were 13 years old.
yeah.
How did that help lead to the career that you have today? And also, if you have any advice, this one might be a little personal question because obviously I'm trying to, start posting covers on social media, and I think you're someone who did that, and it was just absolutely incredible to watch you just explode.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of tough to give advice because I was doing it so unconsciously. I wasn't really aware that it was gonna go anywhere.
Right.
I was just in high school, and I was again super shy, and I couldn't even sing in front of my parents at first. So doing
Right.
videos for strangers in my room by myself was my way of singing to an audience without singing to an audience that was actually
Totally.
there.
I understand that.
Yeah, like it's just easier. I don't know, when you're like more of a introverted person, or like I was. So I just kind of started doing it like that, and I did not get views or anything for like 3 years of posting. And then even when I did get discovered by, you know, the grace of the universe by my production company, like I didn't have like a lot of views. They just happened to like stumble across a video of mine. So it's tough to say, but I think like with what you're doing, I think it's so amazing because you're using every resource that we have nowadays. Like the internet is such a blessing for young artists and people trying to create, because you can post whatever you want and it's direct. And I feel like you're building such a great base of people who love you, because I think you're incredible, by the way, and like way more advanced than I was when I was making videos. Like some of those are so embarrassing. You're like so ahead.
Trust me, I have those as well.
Oh my god, it's so embarrassing.
There are some rough ones.
Oh my god, no, your rough is like my best, so don't worry, you're totally fine.
What? Thank you. But even speaking on that, I feel like I've seen on Instagram, you do support so many smaller artists like myself, and coming from one of those smaller artists, it's like one of the most encouraging things to see someone that I've looked up to actually give you that support. Awesome. And so how did you just like make a decision to start doing that, or have you kind of always been a part of that since you recognized that in your own upbringing?
I mean, I don't know. It was like never a thing that I thought about. I just love to be inspired, and I feel like there's so many talented people, and I would much prefer like my timeline to be, you know, filled with people that are great and making beautiful things than like, you know, whatever else is on the internet. I've just always loved that, and I guess there's a part of me that does identify with that sort of upbringing in music, because that's where I started, and so I just have like a soft spot for people who do that too, I guess. But again, like I think you're so great, and you definitely won't be a small artist for long, so maybe I'm just like ahead of the game.
Thank you.
I can say that I like joined the bandwagon early on.
Thank you. No, it really, I feel like you don't even understand how much that does mean to those people that you, I mean, I remember the day I saw you like reposted something I did on your story, and I was like, all right, I can do this. Like, it was like,
oh my god, you totally can.
But yeah,
Thank you. That's so sweet.
I really admire the way that you use your platform. And I mean, even on touching like current topics like the racial injustices or environmental issues. I know you partnered with Save the Children for some of your songs, and even mental health and so many more things. I mean, I really admire the way that you actually are using the amazing platform that you have for good, and I see that in you a ton as an artist and as a person, so it's completely genuine. But have you always been vocal about those type of issues and speaking out for yourself and standing up for other people, or did it kind of take gaining that courage to do that, knowing that there would be some people who don't agree with you?
Well, yeah, definitely. I think it does take a lot of courage, because, I mean, you know, like anything that you say online is like going to be taken the wrong way by somebody, you know, and especially when you're talking about political things, like it's crazy. I wasn't even aware how much of my following was like, you know, against a lot of my views. Like you lose followers, you get like so many negative comments. But I think the thing for me, like I've always been super open about mental health and things that I've gone through in my life, and, you know, speaking out for equity, whether it comes to like gender equity and equality, or like racial injustices and stuff. But I honestly, like when I started in the industry, like, I mean, Obama was president, and I was living in like my little bubble of Canada, which has its own issues, I'm coming to realize, but I just didn't really understand the like gravity of what was happening politically until, of course, you had this dude in office that was terrible to people, and you had to be aware. And so it's like you kind of get to a point where you have to say something about it, because it's like it's unbelievably wrong. And I feel like the more I grow, the more my voice becomes of use to people in some way, and I just feel like some sort of a duty in a way to speak about it, like no matter what people think, because if it's about humanity and like human rights, like fundamental human rights, it's so important. So I try to. Yeah,
no, I definitely get that, and I feel like you don't have to be a politician to be able to speak up on those topics. I mean, I don't have to like know every single thing about, you know, I think it's okay to be able to have those opinions and stances, because it's not even it's not even, you know, a political thing at this point. Sometimes it's just right or wrong, and I think it's 100%. Awesome that you almost give other people the courage to be able to talk about it as well. So that's super inspiring. Thank you. I also just recently discovered that you have synesthesia. I'm like,
Yes.
always mess up on that word.
I know, it's so hard.
I actually have a friend who has that, and he uses it to his advantage for music because he sees colors for different notes. And so I kind of wanted to know what yours is like and how it's impacted your journey and how it's, made you experience things differently as a musician.
That's interesting. I have a few different types of it, and there's only one version of it that is like in any way useful for my music. I think the rest is just
Right.
kind of nonsensical. But so the one that is helpful is same kind of similar thing to your friend. It's like I see colors with certain songs or sounds. So
Wow.
it definitely helps like when I'm trying to put an album together, because like if there's like too much of the same
Yeah.
color, then it just helps like me understand the variety and helps me balance like the different sounds on a full body of work. Because if like if there's like too
Yeah.
many Pink or whatever songs, then it's like, okay, let me try
Right.
to make something that sounds more blue to me. Like it's weird. It's like a feel thing too. So that's really
Yeah.
helpful. And also with like music videos and stuff, like color schemes
I
on
was gonna
stage, that helps. But I mean the rest, like the other versions I have are just completely like pointless. They're just like associating like genders and colors to like months of the year, like days of the week. It's like really stupid.
I've seen so many videos of people talking about that, like genders to numbers. I'm like, everybody kind of like has different genders for numbers or something. It's such a strange thing, but yeah, it's
it makes no
interesting. Do you
sense.
ever kind of use that to navigate your songwriting? I mean, just kind of like you were saying, knowing if you have too many of one color on an album. Do you ever sit down to write a song and you're like, I'm gonna write a blue song, or I'm gonna write, or is it never like that big until it's done?
I guess for me, it's not so much like a lyric thing, it's more like sounds. So
Right.
not even necessarily notes, just like sounds. So I think in the production is where like that kind of comes in. And if it's feeling like too much of one
Totally.
color, I try to like use sounds that bring up like other visuals, if that makes sense.
Right.
But I guess in terms of lyrics, like the giving like personifying numbers and letters, like sometimes that'll work because I do that with words a lot, because some words
Yeah.
have like personalities and stuff to me. So I find that in my songwriting I always like personify intangible things. Like I'm trying to think of an example. I don't know, like I just use like a lot of personification in my music because
Totally.
of like that association, weirdly. So a lot of my songs
Yeah.
will have references to like things that
Right.
are like not
is
tangible.
is four pink walls pink?
Yeah,
Or is it
weirdly.
not?
I think it is because I visualize my room, so that one's like kind of stupid because kind of
Totally,
obvious,
yeah.
but it is, yeah.
No,
But like
that's nice.
here is like purple, and so that's why like the music video is all
Interesting.
purple, and like every visual surrounding here was like just purple because that's all I
Yeah.
see. Like when I hear that song, it's like smoke and just like dark purple.
I love that. It's like a superpower. I feel like it unlocks a whole other level of creativity.
Kind
That's
of in a
awesome.
way. Most times
Yeah.
it's useless, but I guess for songwriting
Right.
it helps a little bit, yeah.
Totally. So, your album, Know It All, I have to say, is such an amazing album. It had such an impact on my life. I feel like even since the time it came out till now, I still listen to those songs and it makes me feel like nostalgic of growing up and being a kid. And so 6 years later, knowing that it still affects people, did you expect all of the success that came with that album, or was it just completely sudden?
Well, first of all, it's crazy that it's been 6 years. I didn't even notice
Yeah.
that until you said it. Oh my god, I feel old. Man, it's crazy. I definitely didn't expect it. I mean, like I said, a lot of those songs were like the first songs I'd ever made, and when I was writing them with Sebastian at the time, like I was still in school. I didn't have a record deal. I didn't even know that I was like making an album. I just thought I was like testing out the waters of like what it would be like to be in a studio. So I had no idea that like years later people would still be like singing like Scars to Your Beautiful or referencing Here. Like it's
Right.
absolutely nuts. It was just one of those things that happened super fast, and like I mean Here came out and we put it on SoundCloud. Like the label like didn't even want to push it. Like I was just like a new artist and I was like, oh, I have this song, and they're like, okay, like put it on SoundCloud. Like there's like no money behind it, nothing. Like nobody thought it was gonna do anything, and
That's so
it just like
incredible, though.
grew. Thank you. Yeah, I had no idea.
awesome.
Honestly, no idea.
Yeah, I watched another interview of you where you were saying how you did start creating these songs before you even got signed, and then you kind of went around, talking to different labels and trying to get signed. What was that process like? I know it's really important to you just from hearing you speak on these topics about like staying genuinely yourself and true to yourself, even in, you know, what you wear and everything. So what was the process of being like, okay, I want to be signed, but I also want to be exactly myself, like...
Yeah, it was tough. It was like a grueling process that felt like it was probably way longer than it actually was. But when you're doing that, like, again, I was coming right out of high school, was still in school, I think, actually, when I first started meeting with people. So I was like this student who just like had a hobby and a dream, and like I didn't even know exactly who I was. I just knew that I wanted to be me. I knew what I didn't want to be, and I had these songs that I believed in, and you know, you go into these offices of like people who've been doing this for years and like create these artists out of people, and it was tough, like hearing all the no's and hearing people say, like, I had people tell me like, you should be in a band, like you're not a solo artist, or like you're too shy to be a musician. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, like you get all those comments, and at the time when you're like still figuring out who you are, you can start to believe those things. Yeah, 100%. Like instead of taking it with a grain of salt, you like take it right to the heart. Yes. And it's hard. Like I would like, there's like one meeting where I just like cried in the parking lot. It was, you know, a lot of that. But I think you need those things to, I think to make it more fulfilling when you do make it as yourself, because it just makes it that much more like great that you could make it as yourself despite all of those things, or in spite of those things. So I'm really glad that I, you know, had Def Jam who believed in me as I am. And I mean, you still, like, even after you get signed, like you have to say no so many times before you you know, get to a place where people just start listening to you. I think it's a ever changing process, especially like as young women. We know what it's like to have to constantly put our foot down, and like in a way feel like we always have to prove who we are to people. Like even now I have to do that, it seems. So I think just staying strong in that, and saying no a lot of the time is actually what gets you to the place you do want to be in. It's not about like saying yes, it's like the things you say no to that are the most valuable,
that lead you there. And that's kind of amazing too, to have gone through that experience and then to be able to be like, well, I made it out and I'm doing it now, and it's so incredible to like see where you've come from that, you know. So it's awesome. How have you, I guess, touching on that topic, since you started so young and since you're kind of figuring out, I guess, who you were in the process of finding that label and your team and just figuring it all out, how have you stayed so grounded even though you've garnered all this fame and support over the years?
Well, thanks for saying that. I appreciate that. I try my best to be. I think for me, like, it's weird to say because it's my job and it's been a dream of mine, but like the fame aspect of what I do is actually super terrifying to me. Like it was a huge adjustment, and it was never a part of what I visualized when I visualized doing this as a kid. It was never the fame part. It was just writing music. And so I think for me, it's not even about like staying grounded. It's just like, because I'm so afraid of that, and because it just doesn't interest me, I just like keep to myself and keep the same people I always have around me. It doesn't feel like it's something I actively have to do. It just feels like something I have always done and kind of just always want to do, if that makes sense. Just haven't
even separated from it. Totally. I completely understand that. Yeah, especially since you have started so young, and I know I've seen in some of your videos, like your real friends were in the music videos and that type of thing. I think that's awesome. So in a way, they've always kind of been a part of your process and your career, which obviously will help you stay grounded, but I don't think you've ever needed to stay. It's just been like who you are.
Thanks. I'm just like, I have a crippling fear of like of where like the whirlwind that is, you know, this industry. So I try to just like stay away.
It's stressful. Even touching on that, when you take it to your live performances, you supported Coldplay, you supported Shawn Mendes, you've played in these massive, large-scale venues. Do you ever get stage fright? I mean, like you were saying, talking about, you know, having all these fans, obviously you're so grateful for them, but you're kind of terrified of the whole fame thing and that going to your head. When you're standing out in a crowd to like 50,000 people, do you ever like get that little nerve-wracking feeling?
Oh my God, yeah, all the time. Even like at my shows. It's crazy. Yeah. Because, I mean, like, the Coldplay tour was one of the first tours I'd ever been on. It was my first opening gig. Like, what a thing to get for your first time. So I was going from, like, clubs to, like, stadiums, which was nuts. And I mean, they weren't there for me,
Totally.
so I mean, the pressure was kind of gone. But again, there's like this sense to like prove yourself as this young
Totally.
kid who's like opening for the most legendary band in the world. Like, who is she?
Yeah.
Like, who cares? You know? So it
No.
was tough, but yeah, I definitely get stage fright. It's very scary. But
Yeah.
weirdly enough, like, when you're playing for that many people, it's weirdly less scary than like
Less
singing
scary.
for one person, like, in an office or something. Like,
Yes.
doing that was more terrifying than because you like it sort of just becomes like one mass. You don't even realize it's people at that point. It just
Right.
feels like a cluster of like shadows or something. It's really weird.
Totally. Yeah, when you're playing for one person, you're like, they're focusing only on me and everything that I do.
Yeah,
But-
it's terrifying.
So it's, yeah, I'm sure it's a little easier. But you've also gotten to collaborate with some incredible artists like Troye Sivan, Khalid, Zed, Diplo, JoJo, someone I've also collaborated with. And
Yeah.
I've also worked with an amazing Italian artist, and I'm going to pronounce his name wrong, but Eros Ramazzotti?
Yes, close enough. Yes. Close
Okay.
enough. Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And you speak fluent Italian as well, which is so impressive. But I sort of wanted to ask, what is your favorite thing about working with all these different types of artists?
It's awesome because I feel like all the people that I've worked with are very much in their own lane and their own sound, and so I think
Exactly.
you can like. I feel like you could like take something from each person like that I've worked with, especially like when I worked with Zed on Stay. I'd never
Yes.
done anything like that. Like, I was not doing dance stuff. I never thought I
Right.
would. And I mean, like, when you collaborate, like, you're bringing the best of what each of you do and to make something totally different. And I feel like I would have never done something like that if he hadn't pushed me, you know,
Yeah.
to try. So I feel like you can just take experiences and like sonic little you know, pathways from the people that you work with, and everybody that I've worked with has been like so awesome and has taught me a lot
Yeah.
about like where my voice can go and what I can do. So it's cool.
Yeah, and even that song Stay, obviously, like you were saying, it's so different from anything you've done, but I feel like the reason why it was such a huge song was because like hearing your voice on that type of song was so different that it made it stand out from all the other dance songs, you know what I mean? And I think that's what like made it feel so special, and you're like, I've never heard anything like this before. So it really like
thanks.
stood out. Yeah, of course.
Sweet.
So-
I'm glad you think so.
Oh yeah, of course. I remember dancing to that song a ton, and you do not want to see any image of that. Do not imagine that.
Oh my god, you don't want to see me dancing either. It was
Oh,
like the
man.
worst thing to perform it because I'm like, I've never had to like perform a song like this. Like, what do I
have to
do?
do it. Yeah.
Yeah, like there's a lot
I'm
of
the
jumping
same
because I
way.
can't dance.
Yes, exactly. So you won the 2018 Grammy for Best New Artist. I have to say, I remember watching the Grammys that year and seeing you win. It was just like, yes, taking one for
thanks.
the team. All the young girls were just like, oh my god. And you were also the first Canadian to win that award. And I sort of wanted to ask, is
Yeah.
there any pressure that really comes from winning an award like that, especially being the first of something to win an award like that? And if so, how do you deal with that type of pressure?
Yeah. There was a lot of, I mean, especially because we live in a world where, like, again, everybody has something to say. And so
Yes.
the aftermath of that was super hard because I was, like, living with this, like, juxtaposition and, like, this, like, completely, like, this, like, emotional dissonance because I had
Yeah.
just won something that I had dreamed of my whole life. And then
Yeah.
everybody's like telling you don't deserve it, or what seems like everybody is telling you like you don't deserve it, which was like so hard for me because it was like, do I enjoy this? Do I like say something? I didn't know what to do. And you can really get in your head when you're so young and you know, reach something like that so quick. Like I didn't expect it, and I didn't know how to feel about it for a long time. And I think now what I wish I would have done differently is like not believe so much of it, you know, and not let it affect the way
course.
that I view myself or the way that I felt like I needed to go into my next project. Like, I don't know. I feel like those things, while they're amazing, I don't think they should validate or invalidate anything about what you do and who you are as an artist. And
Exactly.
while it's good to place importance on them, you know, when it's good, like you shouldn't
Right.
beat yourself up
Goals
if it's like I don't know. I feel like it shouldn't like dictate how you create music, if that makes sense, or how you feel about
Totally.
yourself, you know.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to separate from that mindset as well. I feel like a lot of people, even I slip into this sometimes of like kind of creating my self-worth around my accomplishments, even though that's like not it at all. And it really does affect the music sometimes. It can be hard to like focus on what you're creating if you're kind of like in it for the wrong reason. But I thought that you deserve to win, if that means anything.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, so I also wanted to talk about, I mean, you are a woman of many talents. You voiced Jane Willoughby in the 2020 animated film The Willoughbys, and I watched it, and I thought you were perfect for it. I feel like you have such a distinct, even just a speaking voice. I just thought you did it so well. I just wanted to know, is voice acting or even just acting in general something that you want to continue pursuing?
Yeah, for sure. I like started in high school. I was like a drama student. Like I loved theater class, and I was like doing all that stuff. So while I would love to like act, again, like I'm very shy around like cameras and doing things like that. So I think voice acting for me was like the perfect medium, because I could act and nobody would know like or see my face, and it was perfect. So I would love to do more voice acting, and maybe like I want to get more comfortable around like on camera too. So I would love to like try little things here and there in acting, because it is a field that I really enjoy. It's something I like to do, but I just got to get over that like little hump of like fear of being on camera. I don't know why. I mean,
it's always terrifying. I mean, there's no way to get around it sometimes, but you just gotta do it. I feel like, if this is so random, but I could totally see you being one of those artists on SNL that perform but also like sneak in for some of the skits and like do that. I could totally see you doing that.
I would love to. Oh my god, SNL's terrifying. I would love to though. That's always been a dream too, of like hosting SNL one day. Or
yes, I've seen your performances on SNL. I thought it was just absolutely incredible.
Thank you. That was a crazy time. Weirdest day of my life.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, The Pains of Growing, amazing record. I have to say, I'm turning 18 very soon, and it's terrifying, and I feel like I relate to that album more than ever. But yeah, growing up just is very stressful, and it sucks, and I feel like this is the first time in my life that I've been aware of growing up. But how have you kind of dealt with growing up in the spotlight like you did? And also, what did you want to really get across with that album? Obviously, each song definitely speaks to the title of the album.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think you said it. I was not only like growing up as a human being and going through, you know, teenager-y stuff. I was also going through all of that with a lot of eyes on me that weren't necessarily there before, you know, and it was challenging because you don't know how much of your views on the world or your views of yourself are yours versus how much of it is like influenced by what people are saying. And you touched on it, like being young women, like we are taught to like place our value on things that are like we're surrounded by rather than what comes from inside us, you know. So we place our value on like the way we look or our accomplishments or who loves us, or you know. So it was super hard because I, you know, in the middle of writing the album, I like went through a bad breakup and I didn't know who I was, and then I was getting all that internet backlash from like the Grammy stuff, and I was getting criticized too for like doing something weird, like I put on a men's suit and did like that whole thing, and it was like,
oh, I thought that was awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, but I mean, it's again like when you're a girl and you do something a little bit like off center, you get like completely criticized. So it was hard for me to like navigate all of that and figure out who I was amidst all of that, and so I had to really pick apart like, okay, how do I feel and who am I now after I've gone through all of this, and how much of the outside do I believe, or how much of it do I want to let in? And so the album just kind of came from being super introspective because I had to be. There was just not enough time before to really focus on like what I was feeling, and I had to take a pause for a second after all that stuff happened to like just talk about what I was feeling and understand it, because a lot of the time I don't understand what I'm going through until I write it out, and I'm like, okay, that was what was happening there. So a lot of that album was just that, and trying to navigate this like in between phase of like being an adult but also not quite an adult yet, like, and how that feels and what that looks like. So that's I guess what it looked like to me at the time, but I feel like we're always growing, and every album I put out after is going to be just like another step of that same idea of still figuring it out, because I mean, life is like unlearning a bunch of things as much as it is learning. You got to like take steps back. So I think that
Right.
album will always be relatable in a way.
Yeah, I
to
mean,
me.
that's interesting you say that, like, we're always learning. I love how, like, your first album's title was Know It All, and it's like, we all think we know it all until we don't.
Yeah. Exactly. Oh, that's exactly
Yeah.
what it was. It was like, even that, like, I feel like my first album, while it was introspective too, it was a lot of like teen angst, and I was like angry about so many
Right.
things, and I was like fist in the air, sort of like, I will not, blah, blah, blah. Like, I was so fiery, and then all this stuff happened to me, and I'm like, wait a minute, like, I'm sad.
I'm
like,
a
this
person.
is, yeah, I'm a person, and I'm sad, and
Yeah.
I like was running away from so many things and using my like teen angst to like push through things instead of like
Right.
going through them and learning from them.
Facing
So
them. Right.
yeah, so that's what The Pains of Growing was, for sure.
Yeah, well, I thought it was amazing, and you handled it very well, and it definitely
Thanks.
like makes me kind of think about where I'm at in life and just kind of focus on the good things, even though it can be a little difficult too.
Yeah,
But
totally.
again, touching on, you know, as women, it feels like not only is there pressure to look a certain way or whatever, but I feel like there's also a pressure for us to almost get competitive with one another rather than lift each other up. And
Yep.
I know social media definitely does that to me sometimes, and I think everybody's affected by that in some way, but how do you feel affected by that personally, and if so, how do you kind of rise above that?
Yeah, that's a great point. I feel like that's something that's been so present with, you know, female artists, like in the industry, especially young girls. Like, you're told
Right.
like that there's like one slot, and like instead of coexisting, like you have to take each other's slot. Like coexisting doesn't exist when it comes to
Right.
like female artists. But
Yeah.
I mean other artists have made this point before, but like you'll see so many male artists that are in the exact same lane, and there's room for all of them. Like, they can make the
Right.
same sounding music, and it's totally
Yeah.
fine. But like for girls, like there can only be one girl who like plays guitar and sings. Like, there can only be
Yeah.
one girl who's like the sexy one. Like, I don't understand where this idea that like coexisting is not allowed in this world. And
Exactly.
I've felt that too. Like, they make you feel like you gotta be the, you know. But I'm like a music fan before anything else. Before I was ever an artist, I grew up listening to and loving so many women who were just like honest and imperfect and great with what they did, like Amy and Lauren and all these girls coexisted, and they made different music, and they were themselves. But like, as a young woman, I just loved that, and I loved all of them, and I never once had
Right.
the thought like, oh, this person is better than this one.
Better.
So
Exactly.
yeah, and so I go into it now like I'm just a fan of people, and I love that girls are out there just writing their own music and
Yeah.
being honest and themselves, and that inspires me more than anything. And I'm like I said, a music fan overall, and I love any time I see someone like you like doing your thing. I think it's great, and I never like feel the need to like, I don't know, I don't feel like there's
Right.
like a slot. Like, we're all like, why
I
can't, like,
feel the
isn't
same
it
way.
great that we're just all doing that? I don't know why
Exactly.
where it got twisted, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that we're almost all told, and I think for some people, if it gets to their head, it almost makes them want to quit. And so I think
Totally.
it's terrible, because there should be, you know, there should be a ton of female artists doing their thing, and, you know, it can be intimidating because there is an ocean of people trying to get to one slot, but there isn't just one slot. We're all just kind of conditioned to think there is. I mean, we listen to so many different artists, and again, like you said, we're not like, this is the one though.
Yeah, no,
You know,
never.
Everybody,
Never.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, so my last question, sort of want to ask this to every person, and it might be more of a personal thing just to get advice, but as a young woman entering the business, I obviously want to use my voice and just be able to do what I love, but it can be scary entering this like massive machine. What is your biggest struggle with the industry, and how have you kind of overcome that?
Great question. There have been a few struggles I've had. I think, if I have to say the biggest one, I think, like, I've always felt, and I know I mentioned this before, but I've always felt like the need to explain myself or prove myself if I do anything that's a little bit left of
Right.
center. And
Totally.
you know, being an artist that like likes to take control of like everything that I do, and I like weird visuals. I like to do things that are a little bit outside of the box, even though there isn't a box. Again, it's
Yeah.
just what we're told.
Right. It's all relative.
Yeah, totally. I think I've struggled with like feeling like I'm not good enough because people made me feel that way in many different ways. And like trusting my own process has been the hardest, because there are people that tell you that your process isn't the right one because you're like a young girl and you're not supposed to know what you're doing. And I think if there's anybody that knows you and your art more than like there's no one. Like if there's anyone that knows you and your art, it's you. And so again, just it's about what you say no to that I think makes you who you are, and knowing who you're not that makes you who you are, and trusting yourself. Of course, taking opinions from others and listening, but your inner voice is the one that you should listen to the most. And it doesn't matter if people like don't get it right away. Like, don't feel like you have to prove something to someone, because at the end of the day, like, it's your name on your songs for the rest of your life. It doesn't matter like who's in your ear. Like, that is your music, that is the legacy you're leaving. So how do you want to leave the world? Like, what do you want to leave in the world? And I've noticed, like, even if people didn't get what I was doing at the time, like years later, if it means something to people, like they catch on, and like they get over the weirdness of it and just enjoy the music. And I don't care if my stuff isn't as big as it used to be, or if something's not as commercially successful. Like, I know that I'm saying something that I can go to sleep at night and be proud of, and I don't feel like I have to like hang this other hat up when I go to bed. I'm still me, and if I die tomorrow, knock on wood, like the stuff that I've said and the stuff that I've stood by, I can fully stand by it even now. And I think that's what's important. So if there's anything I would say, it would just be that don't let anybody tell you who you are, because you know who you are and what you want to say.
Totally, and it can definitely be hard getting opinions from so many people. It feels like it clouds your judgment, but I feel like it's very inspiring seeing how you've dealt with that. I feel like, I know we talked about this before, but you are so genuinely you, and it really helps me be like, okay, artist Lindsey is person Lindsey, and I feel like that's what some of like the greatest artists that I look up to are the same way. So it's definitely inspiring to hear you say that. But
thank you. I hope
thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I hope this was like good enough. I hope I like explained myself well and gave you some good advice, because I think even though I don't think you need it, because you're amazing. I know I've said that like 1,000 times, but you're so good, and I can't wait to hear more from you, because you're so unreal. And everyone's gonna catch on and love you. So I'm lucky that I got to do this.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you, Alessia. It has been an honor. Thank you for your time and advice. I definitely feel like I learned a lot about, my journey and just my own like mental like state I should be in. And so it helps a ton. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yay.
Cool.
Bye.
This is so cool. Thank you. Bye.